Hello, and I hope you're have had a wonderful Monday, and of course, I hope you had a restful and productive weekend. We have another wonderful show for you tonight here on Fresh, Natural, and Live. I apologize for the late posting. It was a very busy end of the week last week and weekend for me. Normally, I have the show posted well in advance of today, but nevertheless, it is a wonderful show. We're going to talk about the potential health benefits and the science behind crystals. And yes, you heard me right, crystals. And so it's an area far beyond my expertise, but I guess tonight has been studying and working with crystals for some time, and she's going to share some insight with us on that. As you know, we like to give you insights in terms of natural ways to improve your overall health. I'm a cardiologist. I've been practicing cardiology for, more than 2 decades. And, my training in medicine has been to focus on the disease state. And over time, while that's effective when someone is acutely ill, I found that in the situations outside of an acute illness, outside of an emergency, it's actually better to step back and try to understand the body as a whole, and not just the body in and of itself, but the body in the context of its environment. So in the context of talking about crystals, we're going to look at the environment that we live in. We've had shows talking about EMF. We had shows talking about the toxins in a home and how to remove them. And so now we're going to look at that from a different perspective, and crystals is something that my colleague, Dr. Palmer, and I talk about from time to time, and we've had some discussions on. And so I said, well, okay, let's do a show on this and bring someone who can give us some insight. So I really look forward to this. And as I always do, I learn a lot, and I hope that you will learn a lot on this show. So before I introduce my guest, I'll bring my colleague and co-panelist, Dr. Celeste Palmer. Celeste, how are you doing today?
I'm well. Hello.
Hope you had a great Monday. Mine was crazy. So I'm exhausted, even though it's only, 7:00 p.m. Central Time. But either way, I'm always refreshed with this course. And our guest tonight is Dr. Lucinda Deason. Dr. Deason is a scientist who has a doctorate in health policy from Michigan State University. She has a master's degree in public administration from the University of Michigan and a Bachelor of Science in Finance from Wayne State University. She is published in some of the top health and law journals. She is the founder of Zone Optimum Health, LLC. This company provides clients and customers with innovative products and wellness services that help them attain and maintain optimum health naturally. So she works in the space of natural health. Dr. Lucy, as she likes to be called. Hello, welcome to the show.
Hi, how are you?
Fine, thanks. How are you doing? So we're going to have this show in 2 parts, and as I get into that, but just looking at your bio is interesting. So you started, and all of this started in sort of traditional areas of learning, and kind of moved into the space of holistic healing and natural health, but you started in health policy, so you're more of a administrative, sort of on the bureaucracy side of things, and public administration and all of that. So how did you get from that area where you're dealing with health policies and procedures, the more regulatory side of things, all the way over to natural health? What was the impetus for you?
Well, I've always been involved with natural health. My great was an herbalist, and I've been applying that to myself personally and friends and family for most of my life. So it was natural for me to gradually move in this direction professionally, where now I'm doing this full time and walked away from academia. This is my passion.
Gotcha. So one of the things that prompted us to do this show on crystals, and Celeste Palmer and I talk a lot, and please chime in, Celeste. We read a lot, and I hear people wearing all sorts of, metals, copper, various other things, and I see people wearing crystals. And so I didn't want to kind of catch everything, but this whole concept of crystals. And so I knew you and Dr. Palmer had, met before and had conversations regarding this topic, and she shared with me the fact that you'll be someone good to bring on. So the whole issue of crystals is one that we wanted to look at from the scientific aspect of things. So just to get started, what are crystals? I mean, I think I know what a crystal is. I'm gonna hold something up in the camera real quick and maybe quiz you in a minute. But what are crystals? I mean, just to help our audience get some context. We think we know. I'm gonna reach over here. Excuse me. Go ahead. If you kind of help
from
out.
a science perspective. So from a science perspective, crystals are simply ions, atoms, and molecules.
Okay.
That arrange in repeating patterns, and they become solid. Mm-hmm.
So, Dr. Lucy, what's the difference in a crystal and a rock, for example?
Good question.
Here, can y'all see this? Now, I know I'm putting you on the spot here, but I mean, I see this has some pretty shades to it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's a crystal or a rock.
Okay.
I need to see it, but anyway.
A crystal is not a rock. A crystal is a mineral.
Okay.
Rocks are usually composed of many different minerals. So the difference between a rock and a crystal is the crystals are minerals. Rocks can contain crystals, but they're not minerals.
So rock is a conglomerate of things. So maybe a conglomerate of crystals or a conglomerate of crystals plus some other stuff.
Correct.
And a crystal is a pure mineral. It's one. How about salt? I mean, pink salt or sea salt. Is that a crystal? Because there's multiple minerals.
It's considered a crystal. Mm-hmm.
Gotcha. Mm-hmm. So salt is a crystal. So that sort of helps. That brings it home for a lot of us. And actually, I just realize that, putting it in the context of a salt being a crystal. So I think this will certainly help bring it home for a lot of us. And I'm making a note here in that regard. Celeste, do you have any other questions?
Yeah, so Lucy, when we bathe within like Himalayan sea salt, we're actually bathing in crystals.
Correct. Correct.
Okay. Or if we eat Himalayan sea salt, same thing.
Correct.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I guess, other bath salts, right?
Correct.
Comment on that. Give us a little bit of we can start with bath salts, Himalayan sea salts. Are there certain properties, and we're going to get into the science of it in a minute. But let's stay on what are crystals. How would you classify crystals in different ways? I'm going to show some pictures that you shared with me of certain crystals. Are there different classes of crystals that we think of? Can we eat them all? Or?
No, we can't. So you have some that are piezoelectric, some that conduct electricity. You have some that do not. They can be classified based on their softness, their hardness, just like you would classify rocks. Mm-hmm.
Gotcha. Now, somebody threw this question up. GMO, Get My Own, asked, is it live? Is the crystal live?
Oh, I say they are. The reason I say it is this. Everything is energy. Everything is vibrating. You're not solid. I'm not solid. The computer's not solid. Same with the crystals. They all have a vibration and energy. So technically, at a subatomic level, we're all energy and vibration. So are the crystals. And so I would say the crystals are alive, and they do grow.
So tell us about that. How do they grow, and what's the mechanism there?
Well, they form. A lot of them form within the earth, and over time, some of them are formed from carbon. Some are formed in water, and through this molecular process, they grow and expand. Mm-hmm.
And we've got Dr. Floyd Atkins, who just joined us here. I'm going to bring him on from behind stage. Hello, Floyd. How are you doing today?
Good afternoon. Good evening. Just glad to be here.
You always look relaxed with a beautiful painting behind you. Welcome.
Yeah.
So the crystals grow. That's amazing. So the aspect of crystals. So they're classified on their electricity, their softness, hardness. You gave me a couple of images of crystals. I'm going to share that with the audience just now. Here we have, just tell us about this as I bring this up on the screen. And this is called amethyst. Tell us about this.
The amethyst is a very calming crystal. It's very relaxing. It gives off a relaxing energy. So it's great for people who are stressed out, anxious. It'll help calm you like lavender does.
Okay, so they have a lavender look to it. Now you say it's a calming crystal. Let me go to the next one first, and I'll kind of get to this question. So this is a calming crystal, and then this is citrine. Oh, is that
citrine?
Citrine?
Yes.
Okay. Tell us about citrine.
Now, citrine, they call that the businessman's crystal because it attracts money.
Huh. Okay. I need to get some of that.
That's a 50-pound crystal there. It's a geode.
Wow. Now, do these have any inherent value in themselves? Do people sell these crystals on the market? What would be the cost of amethyst or the citrine?
Absolutely. Well, I paid about $400 for the citrine.
Oh, wow.
And about $350 for the amethyst.
Oh, wow. That's amazing.
The crystals, just looking online, sometimes up to probably even more, but I've seen $1,000 crystals. I'm like, wow, yeah. I don't totally understand the science of it. I think I got into thinking more seriously about crystals because patients were coming to me when their children were teething, and they used the amber stone as a teething relief, and it's it's amber, and a lot of people are not into crystals or anything, but they said if it works, it works. And a lot of my parents were saying that it actually helped their children and helped them to not have as much drooling, and they were less fussy with it. So some parents said they didn't feel like it did a whole lot, but then some parents said it's doing something, so they just leave it on. So I was like, if that really, are these crystals really decreasing maybe inflammation in the body, and therefore the children don't get the sensation of irritation from teething, and that's what made me start looking into kind of what are crystals and how do they work, and is this real science or not? Yeah,
your geologists, they would say they're just rocks and they're just crystals. Quantum physics would say they're energy and vibration, and they have different vibrations.
Now, I'm sorry, go ahead.
It just depends on whose perspective you're looking at.
Where are they normally found in the environment?
They can be found in caves. They can be found in mountains. They can be found in the earth.
So just pretty much anywhere. Is it? I mean, are these? So I mean, the stones you mentioned seem pretty valuable. It's almost like finding, maybe not like gold, but I mean, are they maybe not equivalent to diamonds, but I mean, these are pretty valuable minerals.
Well, diamonds are considered a crystal.
Gotcha. Now, do diamonds have a healing property?
Yes, they do.
Interesting.
I have to look it up, but they do.
I heard they make women smile. I knew that was one. But so you mentioned the science behind the amethyst in terms of it being calming. What's the evidence behind it being calming? Have there been studies showing people's heart rate going down, or what
That's a good question, and let me look that up and get back to you with that one. That's a good question. Okay. For anecdotal evidence, I noticed that the markets, when children are fussy,
Uh-huh.
and if I let them play with the amethyst,
Uh-huh.
the parents notice that they calm down. It's interesting how that works.
Yeah, that's why somebody did ask about, can you eat them like salt? We answered that. You can't eat these crystals. You can eat salt, which are crystals, sea salt and Himalayan sea salt and other forms of sea salt, but we can't eat these. Someone asked the question, are they tied to a certain religion? Here's the question by Leslie Coleman. Do certain religions use crystals?
Say that again.
Do certain religions use crystals?
I would imagine that they do, but I know in metaphysics we do.
Yeah, so that's, I think, in your church you grew up in, y'all were not allowed to use crystals, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the whole, mysticism and about crystals and fear of learning about crystals is that, it's seen as evil, or I guess people feel like you're worshiping it, but you're not. It's just, so I think that's where that question comes from with, are we crossing into mysticism area, which a lot of people, especially in the church, don't want to kind of touch into. And I think that keeps them away from learning anything about crystals in general.
Well, certainly the crystal.
In the Bible, they mention that the rocks will cry out, and I've gotten that question from people who have come from a religious background. And this is what my answer to that is, well, God made everything. God made the crystals. Yeah. God made the trees. God made the air, the water. Just because some people don't know how to use them and what they have to offer doesn't mean that it's evil. I can't say that something that God made is evil. I can't say that.
Yeah. So Cindy said, not traditional religion, they'll run you out of there. I think that's your church.
Correct.
So let's go back to some of the basics, because a lot of us use bath salts. Bath salts, what are some of the benefits of bath? I mean, I've used bath salts before, and I mean, I don't know, I put them in my bath and I've used them before. I can't, say one way or the other. I feel relaxed, but what are some of the uses of bath salts and the benefits?
I make these Himalayan pink salt bath salts, and what I've noticed is, so the pink salt has 84 of the 102 minerals our body needs, first of all. And so when you bathe in it, your body's absorbing those minerals, which it needs. The pink salt, I noticed, my bath salts, also gets a lot of dead skin out of you. It takes toxins and heavy metals out of you. Of course, it relaxes you. It helps with inflammation. That pink salt is pretty amazing.
So 84 out of the 102 minerals. How about the white sea salt, the ones from the ocean, the kosher salts? Those should be mineral rich as well, right?
But not as mineral rich as the pink salt. The pink salt has, that I know, are the most minerals. I used to do the Dead Sea salt baths, but when I learned that the pink salt had more minerals, I started using the pink salt.
So the other salt probably have about half the minerals compared to pink salt?
Probably. Probably. I need to look that up too.
Gotcha. So the and minerals are key. And one thing I want to point out to our audience, because we talk about salt being equal, and when we talk about salt consumption, we say, okay, low sodium, and that's constantly preached. And the thing is that they're equal, but the table salt that most people are accustomed to, as well as the salts that are added to most processed foods, these salts originate from, say, a sea salt, but they're boiled to very high degrees, and the extra minerals are extracted from them. So you're left with sodium chloride, and typically when they're boiled, they're black, so they have to be bleached. and they had to use a talc, an anti-caking agent in them. So the table salt, the typical table salt, of course, they fortify with iodine, but the typical table salt has, anti-caking. It's an imbalanced mineral. It's only sodium chloride. There are no other balanced minerals. And you talk about the life and energy of these crystals. I suspect after it's boiled and heated, that energy, that vibration is annihilated. And so when we talk about salts, and I'm glad we're on this subject of crystals, because when we started talking about crystals, wait a minute, salts are crystals too. That it helps us get into that conversation about, salt being salt versus other forms of salt. Now, granted, when I recommend people use salt consumption, I tend to say, okay, only use pink sea salt or kosher sea salt, because more mineral balance. And also give them the same precautions in terms of not overusing it. But we still have to understand that they're different from a molecular standpoint based on what's done to these natural salts. You have any comments on that, Floyd?
Well, I do. How did you know?
I can tell by your facial expression you're getting ready to.
Yeah, in my experience with the salts, I guess the pink salt and the sea salts are primarily a potassium chloride and a magnesium chloride, which have that less effect on blood pressure, and as the sodium chloride. Most of the sodium chloride we get, like what Morton salt used, is mined out of the ground. The Celtic salt or sea salt, it has more minerals in it because it has the ocean. They take the water out, sea water out, you got a different salt. And then the pink salt, which comes out of Himalayan, is really the ultimate of all the salts because it has the greatest combination of the salts and, again, less of the sodium chloride, because sodium chloride, I think, is the big problem. And you did hit on a couple of things with the when you spoke about the caking agents and the bleaching. Most people realize that there's a significant chlorine residue when they bleach salt white, because they want salt to be consistent. So most of the salt companies, when you see a white table salt, we tell our patients to stay away from that, because you're getting chlorine residue, and chlorine is a toxin. So you're asking your toxic overload when you're using that type of salt. But the salts have that the minerals have that alkalizing effect on your body. When you were going back to talking about the crystals again specifically, I think the amethyst is great. What we've had a lot of experience with when it comes to healing is is jade and also tourmaline, because when you heat them, like with a heating pad, they actually emit far infrared radiation, which has a healing effect. It has a anti-inflammatory effect. It helps with circulation. It has so many things. So, I think the crystalline structure, and we don't know a lot about it. We talked about religion in crystals, but I think, there are a group of people called the Atlanteans. They use crystals all the time. So, I look at it as that, the lack of knowledge, us knowing about other cultures that used crystals, is where our lack of knowledge comes from, because of course, Atlantis is not here anymore, but I truly believe that, because they use crystals for flying aircrafts. I could go on and on about the mythology of that, but it's only mythology because we don't have any hard facts. But I think crystals are very powerful when it comes to the energy they produce and the effect they can have on the human body.
Wow. So this has been enlightening, Dr. Lucy, because back to what are crystals, and when we were talking about crystals, I kind of forgot about salt and diamonds and all of those things, and we use them on a regular basis. What we'll want to do in the second half, we have a number of interesting questions, one in particular about Epsom salt. But on part two, what I want to do is I want us to get into some of the practical uses, which we touched upon now. And then I'd like for you to share some stories of some of your clients and your particular use of salt when we come back. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a short little station break, and we're going to come back and we're going to talk about practical applications and how we might introduce the use of crystals in our everyday life. So y'all stay with me. Okay, welcome back to part 2. And earlier we talked about salts, crystals rather, and we talked about what are crystals. And Dr. Lucy pointed out the fact that they are minerals essentially, and they have vibration and energy. And there's a connection between humans who have vibration and energy and these crystals. And we talked about practical uses of crystals, and we're going to get into that more in this part 2. Particularly sea salt, Himalayan sea salt is a crystal. The regular kosher Celtic sea salt's a crystal. Diamonds are crystals. And we shared a couple of images of crystals earlier, and we're going to share those in part 2 as well. But what I'd like to do is bring our guests back on our panel. We have Dr. Ford here with us, and Dr. Palmer and Dr. Lucy Deason. So we talked earlier about what are crystals. We covered some science behind it, some of the aspects of it. And when you and I had a phone conversation, you pointed out something that was interesting, is that crystals are used in certain mechanical devices and the like. Share some of that insight with our audience.
Sure. So I said crystals are energy and vibration. Mm-hmm. And they use crystals in clocks. They use them in watches, the quartz crystal. They use them in computers. They use them to conduct electricity as well. So this they're not just a mineral. They actually have practical applications. Science recognizes the energy that they emit. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yes, that's an interesting point. And so the conductive properties of crystals is one that's valuable. And of course, we are electrical beings, and so we conduct energy, as electrophysiologists, I used to ablate electrical pathways for a living. I still manage electrical pathways, and we do EKGs and EEGs. And so we're constantly measuring the electricity in our bodies. And so these crystals have conductive properties. So there's a potential symbiotic relationship or practical application there.
I want to add something in there that this about the energy of crystals. The first radio set ever built was a crystal radio set, which operated strictly on a crystal. It was a magnetic crystal, but I don't even know what type of crystal it was, but it made my radio play, and I won a science fair project in it.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, crystals have power. I just want to add that info. Yeah, and you could actually pick up radio stations with the crystal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, many of the first radios that were ever invented used crystals.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Dr. Lucy, don't they use the crystal in our cell phone?
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, that's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
So, practical uses. So we had this conversation on EMF, and we talked about the potential health benefits. Can you share with us? And what I'm going to do, while you talk about this, I'm going to share with the audience. If you didn't catch our first part, we shared a couple of pretty valuable crystals that you shared with us. I'm going to show these images. But do you have any anecdotal stories with some of your clients who've used crystals and what they've used them for and what benefits you've found or they found?
Okay, yes. I have a personal story. I have the selenite. Selenite is one of my favorite crystals here. And
hold on, on the big screen here.
This is one of my favorite crystals, selenite. It's a high vibration crystal. I had signs of carpal tunnel about 10 years ago. I was a professor and scientist, and I typed a lot on the computer. And I started sleeping with the selenite in my hand at night. And it took about a couple of months, but the symptoms went away, have never come back, ever. That's my personal story with the crystals. And then I have clients that buy them because they're stressed out, nervous, and They have a calming effect. I have some crystals that repel negative energy. And people have noticed that they take it to work with them, and they notice that the coworkers either calm down or stay away from them.
Wow.
Yeah, very interesting.
Interesting. So we, Floyd, you did a talk on EMF a while back, and is there any role for crystals in protecting against EMF?
There is. What they do is use a resonance energy from crystals to block EMF radiation. Like EMF is a type of radiation, electromagnetic, but the way they vibrate, they can have a negative effect, like cell phones or cell phone towers and actually Wi-Fi. But if you can find crystals that actually emit it's a radiation that doesn't block those, but it balances those. When you put two radiations together, they balance and come out to a frequency that's not harmful to the body. And there are certain crystals that do that. What some of the devices that they use now that you buy from these companies actually imprint those frequencies into the devices, and then you use them as a blocking or a balancing the energy. But yeah, crystals could do that, but they would be more expensive to use in those type of devices.
Gotcha.
Dr. Floyd, if you're trying to block EMF, for example, around your house, do you need to? How do you know the range? You need a big crystal? Do you need a lot of small crystals? Do you place them inside the house, outside of the house? How does that work?
Well, the most important thing is put them as close to your body as you can, because you want to create a field in your own personal environment, in your body space that will balance those energies out that's coming from the Wi-Fi radiation. So there are some devices that supposedly do that for a room size or a house size, but basically, around your computer, around your own personal body. That's why a lot of people wear necklaces and wear bracelets that do that. Some people have devices they put on their cell phone, and they put on their computers that help. And like I said, and while we're talking about, I just remember I want to tell Dr. Lucy, I'm wearing some jasper around here. I wear jasper all the time. You got your jasper?
I got black tourmaline, and I also have, this is called an Oregon.
Okay.
This also protects you from radiation from the cell towers.
Right. Right.
So wait, how do you spell that?
Orgone.
Okay, Oregon. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So protects EMF.
Yeah. Yeah. And they had a lot of this, like even with the, and I need to get that Oregon too, but the jasper, for negative energy, for anxiety, for confusion, helps with stress reduction. So that's kind of a general crystal that people could use every day, whether you have it in a ring, whether you have it in a necklace, things like that. But and you can have multiple crystals. I think I say you have how many? You have those two?
I have a lot. Black tourmaline is good for EMF also.
Yes, it is.
Which one is that?
Black tourmaline and shungite.
Okay. Yeah, I may need to get with you on those. I may need to purchase some. Here's one of your fans of the Woodlands Farm, Jackie Jones. She missed seeing you at the Woodlands Farmers Market. She likes your daily. So basically,
question, Dr. Lucy. Somebody suggested one time that you're supposed to charge the crystals or clean the crystals. Can you talk to us about that?
Sure. Yes. So you want to keep the crystal charged up, and some of the ways you can do that, you can put it in salt. You can use sunlight. I wouldn't recommend it for the amethyst or the rose quartz because the sunlight will make the color fade away. You can charge them with the full moon. And I try to charge my crystals at least once a week to keep the energy, the vibration up high.
So you would use like a sea salt, a pink sea salt to charge it?
Yes, you can. And the selenite here, it charges other crystals. It's a high vibration crystal.
I see. So the selenite.
Mm-hmm.
And selenite, CE, what, LLONIET?
SELENITE.
SELENITE. Okay. So that's a high vibration. So the high vibration crystals charge other crystals.
Yes. Yes.
Gotcha. So are you aware of any published data or any scientific studies looking at crystals in any way? Has anybody, put it to the test to your knowledge?
I'm sure some people have. For your follow-up show, I'll look into that. Mm-hmm.
Do you know of anything, Floyd? Or any studies? Oh, you're muted. Hold on. You're muted. Floyd, you're muted. Floyd, you're on mute.
Oh, okay. What I was saying was back to the Atlanteans, the only ones I've never done any in-depth study on it, but they're all dead now. I've read books on it. I took a big interest in crystals for a number of years, but I really haven't seen any studies where people really want to experiment it because, unless people can find some objective scientific root to it or to test the vibrations, it just hasn't been done. There's a lot of work been done on frequencies, but not specifically on the frequencies produced by crystals.
I imagine it'd be hard to do. I mean, there's some hard studies to put it, to control variables and the like. So we'll have to kind of put our brains in. So, Cindy Goodson wants to know, do you sell crystals, Dr. Lucy?
Yes, I do.
Okay. It'll be a long shipping deal there. Is there a crystal recommended for children with ADD?
Amethyst, that's very calming. Mm-hmm.
So Angela Rideau Breaker, amethyst, get some amethyst if you know any kids who have ADD. So the whole aspect of the use of crystals and your clients, typically, who do you recommend? Let's say someone goes to you. What's the typical client who, calls you up for your services and they'll give you issues X, Y, and Z, and you come up with a natural health plan for them.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the common complaints or issues that you may get if someone has, that for the recommendation of crystals? So for instance, if I get a person coming to me and they have high blood pressure and a short of breath and a swollen legs, and I may give them a vasodilator and a diuretic to get the swelling off. And so that's a complaint that I would use those drugs for. What are some of the typical complaints or concerns that you would recommend crystals for in general, or as part of a natural health treatment, natural health recommendation for your clients?
I would recommend the selenite for pain. It helps to alleviate pain. For people who are stressed out and anxious, I have them get the amethyst to relax them. So it's true that I go to the selenite and the amethyst for the most part. Mm-hmm. There are a lot of people, especially with COVID and everything that's been going on, that are very anxious, very stressed out, worried.
So arthritic pain or just general muscle aches and pains like that. So inflammatory conditions, right? That's the selenite?
Yes, selenite. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I wanted to add something, Dr. Montgomery. Miss Goodman, Cindy Goodman, she said it's too woo-woo for mainstream science, which is, yes, this is true. But like I said, the mothers that I see in my practice, it is kind of weird and woo-woo for mainstream, but there are no side effects. There are no adverse effects. If it doesn't work, it just doesn't work. But if it does, then it's great. So I don't see where maybe not spending $400 on it if you're not really like that. They sell them at a cost.
That's a side effect.
But you can get a little one and just see if it helps out. Anyway, and I think also for the the person who asked about ADD, I think the expectation should be, it's not a medicine. So it's not going to alleviate all the symptoms. But the idea, like Dr. Lucy said, is it helps to calm at times. But it's not going to alleviate ADD.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Now, I like those comments, and to piggyback on what you said regarding Cindy Goodson's comment, eating a plant-based diet is too woo-woo for medicine in some cases. I mean, a lot of my colleagues say, well, this is, it's crazy to just recommend a diet where give them their pills and their drugs and their procedures and let them eat what they want. And so we started out on the fringes when we start to tell people to start to eat healthy, and we do. I mean, and when we talked about discussed bringing this show on, and Dr. Palmer and I had a long discussion on it, and there was that concern about, well, because we looked up things and what's the science? There's not a lot. And here's what I'll say is, and I'm a medical person, I'm a scientist and the like, and we're serious about what we present to our audience. And the reason we wanted to talk about crystals, because there is some validity in terms of the use of it. We use crystals, in our food in terms of sea salt as is used in our devices. And it's a conductor of electricity. So there's a practical aspect of these crystals. And then there's the other side, which is outside of where we say we've studied in detail, except for the people in Atlantis, according to Dr. Atkins.
Mm-hmm.
But we just because we haven't looked at the science behind it and studied it doesn't mean there's a reality behind it. And so I want to have this discussion in a serious manner and say, okay, what do we know about crystals and what do we not know about crystals, and create a foundation for it. So yes, there are practical applications in terms of food or bath salts, which there's some calming effects. Again, we don't have case control studies, etc. But as a medical scientist, I understand case control studies, and that's not the end all be all. You can get one drug versus another drug, or a drug versus placebo, create a case control study, and you can contrive that study to where it will show you an outcome that you want to see. And so we say, okay, that's the science. And in medicine, we have a guideline directed therapy, meaning that we'll do the science behind one drug and show that if you give it to a patient for so many weeks compared to nothing, it drops the blood pressure. So okay, that's scientific evidence that medication drops blood pressure. But there's a lot of things that are limited in that. And so we have to be careful when we say, okay, there's science behind it, because there's a lot of medical literature, but there's a lot of literature that can be misleading. And the literature doesn't cover the whole breadth of what we're dealing with. The point I'm getting at is science is our ability to look out on nature and say, hey, this is what I see. But it in and of itself is not the whole truth. And just because something is in a scientific journal doesn't mean it's the last word, because there are many things that have been published, and you go and publish something else that actually contradicts that because the studies were designed the wrong way. So I say that to say this. We're looking at this because yes, crystals are real. They're part of nature, and it's part of a discussion. We do apply them to our lives, and I think it's worth that discussion to look at what's the knowledge base that we have about crystals, and maybe this discussion will lead to some scientific investigation down the road. So I wanted to sort of throw that out. Sorry about that little small speech, but I think it's important from the standpoint of the show's perspective that we say, we're talking about this, and we came into this knowing there's not a whole body of scientific literature behind science and this and these journals. It's still worth the conversation because it's something that does exist. People are using it, and I think we need to try to get some level of understanding behind that. Anybody else want to comment on that?
I like to comment. Yes, it's kind of related to this topic. Negative ions heal us. It's what we don't see that really matters when it comes to our health, more so than what we do see. And negative ions are simply an oxygen atom with an extra electron, and they heal us. We absorb 85% of them through our skin, and then we inhale 15% of them. 15% of them. Now, nobody's talking about that, but that's very important. I went to the beach yesterday to take in a lot of negative ions. They cluster in natural places. There's a lot of negative ions in the air after a thunderstorm, and that stuff heals us. But traditional health, they don't talk about that. But it's very important.
That also is the grounding. Grounding is the negative ions, which Dr. did a lecture on grounding.
Are crystals rich in negative ions?
Yeah, they're made of ions. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Are they a rich source of negative ions, typically?
I'd say yes. Yes.
Okay, because that would be important because, I mean, an ion donation to a free radical, that's the mechanism of antioxidants, so donating an ion to a free radical. So yeah, a rich source of negative ions is very important. So do you have any comments on this, the science, or any commentary, Dr. Atkins?
Well, I agree with the negative ions. Being on the waterfall, that water running over, like you say, went to the beach, that's great, the ocean, the waves, but falling water, running water. So we get synthetic negative ions when we do things like a shower. It gives you that same effect, but not what a waterfall or something like that would do. But that's one of the research I had done on that. But yeah, healing effect is tremendous. One thing I wanted to say about about crystals, again, another one that I use in our practice is zeolite. We talk about zeolite is actually a crystalline structure. And it captures, it captures viruses. It's able to capture toxins. So when you want to detoxify a person, it's like a bentonite clay or something like that. But zeolite is very powerful that way. And it has, there is a prescription medication that it's antidiarrheal. And the primary ingredient in it is zeolite because it dries up excess water, it captures water. So. And then you mentioned the Epsom salt, and that you stimulated me with that because during my time in podiatry, Epsom salt was significant for people who had foot pain because it was a great astringent, but it also reduced inflammation. So a person who would have any kind of swelling or pain or joint pain, we were taught that it works wonderfully, and to this day, I don't have a detailed explanation of how Epsom salt really relieves inflammation, other than being an astringent. It has that property, but again, it's a salt concentration, and the energy from the crystals that a salt that has that property. So, Epsom salt is that magnesium in there has a beneficial effect.
Wow. So here's Bob Hogan wants to know how do you determine what crystals are valid, and how did I get lost in the snake oil? What? But Bob, I got a crystal here. I can say it's about $1,500. It looks pretty good to me. It's some shiny parts to it. I'm just teasing. But what are some buyer beware type comments in terms of buying? If I go online and Google crystals and I want to buy amethyst, how do I know I'm getting the real stuff?
Good question.
It's hard. So the field isn't really regulated. I mean, what do you? I mean, I guess sources of crystals, and you just have to be in the know. You've been doing this for years.
Correct. I found reliable sources. I've been collecting rocks since I was a little girl. It just came to me naturally.
Wow. So that's something that we'll have to kind of investigate, Bob, and give you some more information on it. Now, Lisa Coleman, would it be a good idea to surround your space with crystals? I think that's what Dr. Atkins says. I guess you would, around your computers, or places that are highly electrical, right? To balance it out. Or, I mean, next to your bed, I guess anywhere you stay.
Well, I think Dr. Luce will agree, just for overall well-being. If you put it on your desk, if you put it in your environment, if you put certain crystals in your sleeping area, and she may have more information about which crystals to choose from, but all of those things that will have that beneficial energy or the vibration it gives off would be helpful.
I agree.
So, Dr. Lucy, so I'm going to name some locations. So I'm going to use myself as an example, and I'm just going to name different places I hang out, at times, and maybe you can just throw out a crystal that I would use there. So, in my bed. So I guess on my nightstand in my bed, what crystal should I put there?
I would have amethyst there.
Amethyst there. So I'm sitting here. I got this nice big screen curve. And my big computer, and I've got some electronic things around me here. My cell phone's not too far away. What should I have in this desk to kind of balance that out?
I'd have some shungite, some black tourmaline. I'd have the organs.
So probably three of those: shungite, organ, black what?
Tourmaline.
Tourmaline.
Tourmaline. Tourmaline.
Tourmaline. Lita, tourmaline. Wow. And then let's say outdoors, I'm out in my backyard working out. Should I put crystals out there? I'm grounding, I'm on the earth.
I have some at my front door.
The front door. I haven't got the front door yet.
Keeps people out.
Those are the positive ion crystals. Now the other thing is that the other place I was going to mention is the kitchen. What should I put in the kitchen?
I would put some selenite in there, but I'd also have some black tourmaline around by the refrigerator. So really? we talked about negative ions. Positive ions come from electrical devices, and they make us sick.
Okay. So you want your highest negative ions in those areas where the positive ions may be coming from those devices.
Correct.
And so I would imagine the crystals are throwing out negative ions and neutralizing those positive ions, perhaps.
Correct.
Interesting. In fact, I imagine it'd be attracting it, pulling it away from you. That's interesting. I can almost imagine a study being done. I'll give some thought to that. Cindy Goodson, when crystals are heated up, it exponentially enhances the healing properties, while amethyst, jade, and tourmaline and obsidian are all each unique crystal. They all produce negative ions and far infrared rays, which are a cornerstone of healthy line mats. So we got, and then thank you for this information. There's a lot of misunderstanding of crystal, and it's been a taboo area for most. Thanks for the conversation. I think we need to look at it more. And I think it's important to open our minds to these things. Now, GMO, let's see here. Whoops, a number there. Let's see. I don't know if I want to put that on, but if possible, will you be able to crystal my mission in my new wellness center? Okay, get my own. We'll send some information to you about crystals and some. I made some notes here, so we'll get some information to you. And then Cindy wants me to send notes as well. So any final thoughts as we get close to closing out tonight on crystals? We talked about potential health benefits, how we use them in a house. The standard, the science community hasn't really studied this very much. I mean, you would think they would study it. I guess you can't patent it, but my goodness, the cost, you can make some money on this stuff. But I guess it's not anything that's sort of got into their fray. But let me go to the panel first, and then Dr. Lisa, I'm gonna let you have the final word. Floyd, any final words on crystals? And it seems like you use them a lot. And what are some of the take-home messages we should leave to our audience?
Well, to understand that crystals again are part of the earth, and it's our connection with the basic environment. I think we miss that connection when we come into a world that we have built as all concrete and stones. We don't do the grounding like Dr. Celeste says, and we don't have that connection. So if you have crystals, whether it's a bracelet, whether it's a necklace, or whether it's in your personal environment, you get that vibration back that you're missing. Because even in our bodies, when we eat food, the minerals that we eat, the the primary reason we eat plants are for the minerals, the vitamins, the minerals, and antioxidants, but it's more specifically for the minerals, because minerals are a foundation of pH balance. They go along with the biology so well. So my thing is having that connection back with the environment, that vibration back to the environment is just positive for the immune system, positive for the mood, positive for reducing stress. It just has those kind of benefits on calming us down and keeping us in balance.
Wow. Any final words, Dr. Palmer?
I think we probably use them without even thinking about it. And I say that because a lot of people wear jewelry because it's pretty. But, and we talked about diamonds, but there are, hundreds of other stones that people wear. They're birthstones, and all of these stones, we have a magical meaning for it. Mine is this and it means this, but there's a reason, and maybe it goes back to the Atlantean times, that they were using these stones and they gave them different months, and they used the diamond or they used the emerald for certain things. So we use them, we just don't know how to use them to our benefit. So, I think it's, like you said, worth studying and finding out more about, because they're here, we're using them anyway. So why not understand what we're doing a little bit better? And also when, Dr. Lucy, when you had was the organ that you had, the pyramid, when you lifted that up, that reminded me, like, even looking at how that shape, I don't understand the science behind it, but obviously, the Egyptians did. And the shape of it has also something to do with a larger meaning behind that, because a lot of times you'll find Himalayan sea salt shaped in a pyramid shape, or some other things that are shaped in a pyramid shape. And so that also has some type of healing meaning to it. I'm saying I don't understand it, but I know that it does.
Dr. Lucy, I'm going to get you to get the final word. Before you get the final word, show that crystal again, that pyramid-shaped crystal. Which one is that again?
This has lapis in it, lapis lazuli.
Wow, that's beautiful. No, was that the natural shape, or you think somebody just cut it in that shape?
They cut it in this shape.
Wow, that's beautiful. So what parting words do you have for our audience in terms of the use of crystals and the benefits, and as we walk away from this whole, this conversation, what parting words do you have regarding the use of crystals and so on?
I would recommend that they go to a crystal store. I know this sounds strange, but the crystals, they draw you over. The one that is for you, when you go into a crystal store, they have energy, and it's like a magnet. You're drawn to certain crystals for a reason.
Wow.
So I say go play with it. Go in the store and just see what you're drawn to. They have a lot of energy.
Do you know of a good crystal store here in Houston? I know we have people from all over, but is there some place in Houston that we can probably
There's a Katie Rock store. There's a Magic Cauldron. In Austin, they got a big store called Nature's. I'll have it for the next show. I'm blanking on the name of it, but they have a gigantic rock store. It's amazing. It's amazing.
That's in Austin, right?
It's in Austin, but in Houston, you've got Katie Rock store, you've got Magic Cauldron. Oh, and there's also Mind, Body, and Soul off of I-10.
Got you. And we'll probably kind of do a search in the next show, put maybe a list of places that are around the country that are good to go. So going to a crystal store, basically that experience of, I never thought of that, is you look through different rocks, you'll probably be drawn to one crystal. I said rocks, that's a slip of the tongue. If you look at different crystals, you'll be drawn to one versus the other. So there's sort of a natural attraction, you think, that you might have.
Yes, there's a resonance. Yes.
Wow. Well, I'll tell you, I've learned a lot as usual, guys. Thank you very much for enlightening me. Most of all, of course, our audience had very wonderful questions, and as always, we're left with probably more questions than we answered, but that's always good because that, more questions leads to more thinking and more thought-provoking analysis. So thank you very much. I'll see you guys backstage. Thanks again, Dr. Lucy. Everyone, thank you very much for joining us tonight, and we hope that you liked the show. If you did, please give us the thumbs up and share it with your friends. I think this is good information. As I always say, we give a variety of information on the show, and you've seen, discussions on hardcore cardiology with PowerPoints and detailed analysis, and you'll see many different discussions on things where there's not a lot of detailed analysis, but there's a lot of insight that is had that we do have, and more insight that we need to have. And so we try to bring these topics to the forefront and bring experts like the Dr. Lucy, who's dealt with crystals in this case for a very long time. And so I hope you enjoyed that show. And we will be back next week. The next week's topic is a surprise, but I will have it posted early. But until next time, I want you to keep it fresh, natural, and live.